Ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow is basically a holiday for baseball fans like you and me. It's opening day. There is some talk that there might be some rain in the Bronx tomorrow and Friday. But I still wanted to take you guys through every player preview that I did this winter, mostly since about early February I started doing these. I didn't get everybody from the bullpen, but I got every starter on the team. I didn't get Jay Bruce because it was such a late development, but I did get a number of these guys, and I've got over an hour of content for you right now. My original intention was to do this as a live stream, but I'm just too busy. I've got some wrist issues that I got to take care of, and I'm having a live stream with Patrick Hennessy tonight to go over our pitching projections. So I just thought I would put this up and let it marinate in the world and just see how it does. So give it a like and a subscribe if you enjoy this. Here's every player preview that I did this winter. Enjoy. When you become the number 2 overall pick in the Major League Baseball amateur draft, right between Bryce Harper and Manny Machado, I think it's fair to say that you've got some real talent and some very nice potential. Jasson Dominugez is physically the prototypical pitcher. He's 6'5", 230 pounds. He's got a mid-90s fastball. He's got a very, very sharp curveball, a good changeup. And he's just 29 years old. He's still young. So why has Jasson Dominugez, who has all the potential and the size to be dominant, why has he never become an ace? Why has he never lived up to his potential? Well, let's start off with the injuries and illnesses. He's had 2 Tommy John surgeries, one in April of 2014, and then another in August of 2019. He also came back from testicular cancer in 2017. So what he lacks in an overall resume, he makes up for in perseverance. This guy does not give up, and I seriously think he's about to build his resume. Jasson Dominugez was once roommates with Gerrit Cole back in their Pirates days during spring training. They've remained close friends, and Gerrit Cole actually provided a reference to the Yankees on how good Jasson looked in his bullpen sessions this winter, partially facilitating a trade from Pittsburgh to New York. You don't see a lot of pitchers come back from 2 Tommy John surgeries, but it does happen occasionally. You may remember Nathan Eovaldi, who was a Yankee from 2015 to 2016. He had his second Tommy John procedure in 2017 and helped Boston win the 2018 World Series. It's worth noting that the most innings he's pitched in a season since his second procedure is 111. Jasson Dominugez recognized that his delivery was causing strain on his elbow. His extreme arm swing left his elbow dragging behind the rest of his body as he drove down the mound towards home plate and taking on abnormal amounts of abuse with each delivery. But he's on record as having fixed that. And his recent bullpen shows that he's now generating much more of his powerful delivery with his legs. And his arm is in a much more powerful position and should be taking a lot less stress. He's also been noted to be throwing with exceptional control this winter, and the heat and curveball are obviously still there. So how does this affect his performance? We'll have to wait and see. But I can tell you that I'm much more confident in this version of Jasson Dominugez than I was of the version that was coming back to Pittsburgh and had that big loopy arm motion. And after watching 33 years of baseball so far in my life, longer than Jasson Dominugez has been alive, I know that if there's one thing that baseball loves, it's a great story. How great of a story would it be for 2 guys who were number 1 picks with the Pirates in back-to-back years, over a decade ago, one pitching for his favorite childhood team, the other having beaten cancer and recovered from 2 Tommy John surgeries in Yankee Stadium this October. Once again, packed like sardines in the post-pandemic world, 45,000 New Yorkers strong, hoisting their Commissioner's Championship trophy. How can you not be romantic about baseball? You don't get to be the number 5 overall pick in the Major League Baseball draft unless you have some pretty obvious talent. And from the time that Clint Frazier was a teenager, it was pretty evident that his bat speed was something special. When the Yankees traded for him, Brian Cashman notoriously called it legendary bat speed. When the Yankees were trading their 2 biggest assets in 2016, the 2 main returns they got were Gleyber Torres for Aroldis Chapman and Clint Frazier for Andrew Miller. When Clint Frazier finally got called up to the majors in 2017, he really made an impact right away. He hit a home run in his first game against the Astros. 6 days later, he had a walk-off home run against Corey Knebel of the Brewers, and the crowd was just in pandemonium at that point. and it looked like the future was so bright for Clint Frazier. But in 2018, he suffered a concussion, and he missed pretty much the entire season. He did play a little bit at AAA, but he just wasn't the same player. And then in 2019, he finally gets a little bit more of a chance in the major leagues, but his defense really suffered from that concussion. He was tentative going near the wall. He was tentative to lay out for balls in the outfield, and he kept changing up his cleats. He was trying to do this thing where he would take tennis shoes and add new cleats to the bottom of them, and he would change his cleats as kind of a social media stunt every single day, which, look, until you're established in the big leagues, you really shouldn't do stuff like that. One thing I've always wondered is if constantly switching out his footwear that year contributed to his defensive struggles. Anybody who's played the outfield can tell you how important your footwear is to tracking the ball. If you got the wrong shoes on, the wrong cleats, the ball will kind of bounce as you're running. Anyway, he struggled defensively, and last year he showed a trait that I don't think gets enough credit in baseball, and that's perseverance. He came back from being one of the worst defensive outfielders in all of baseball to being a top 3 Gold Glove finalist, and Major League Baseball actually ranked him as the number 9 overall left fielder. He actually played a lot of right field too last year, filling in for Judge. But I think that he's got enough speed to cover left field in Yankee Stadium, which is by far the biggest left field in all of baseball. A lot of times, guys, when they struggle in New York, the media can get to them, the fans can get to them everywhere they go. They see the newspapers that, have headlines about how much they've struggled. So it takes a lot to kind of put that behind you and rise once again. And Clint Frazier did that, and because he did that, he earned a ton of my respect. I'll never forget the swagger that he had when he came back last season and went 3 for 4 on that first night after he got called up against the Braves, hit a big home run, ripped a ball to left field. He basically hit laser beams all over the ballpark all night long, and you could just tell this was a different Clint Frazier. Without Clint Frazier last year, I'm not sure the Yankees don't finish in 3rd place behind the Blue Jays. He carried them on a number of occasions. He had a lot of big hits and big defensive plays. One thing that I really like about Clint Frazier is his throwing motion from the outfield. And he comes directly over the top when he throws the ball, which means his ball is going to stay true. It's not going to fade off to the arm side like a lot of guys when they throw. Because a lot of guys throw 3/4, and that just creates a natural spin coming out of your hand where it's almost like a long-distance two-seam fastball where it kind of drifts away from your target. Clint Frazier comes directly over the top, and it's going to create a direct, straight line to the bag that he's throwing to. That makes him a deadly thrower from the outfield. Accuracy is key. For much of his time with the Yankees, Clint Frazier has been blocked. But this year, the Yankees have not re-signed Brett Gardner, who, it could be argued, is one of the biggest fan favorites on the team. He's a left-handed bat, which they're sorely in need of. And I think that they finally decided that, hey, look, Clint Frazier can get the job done out there. Why pay Brett Gardner $7 or $8 million to watch him decline when you got Clint Frazier, who's only going to get better over the next few years? And he doesn't make nearly as much. Clint Frazier is probably going to have a very nice year in 2021. If he stays healthy, if he can avoid running into walls and getting hurt, I think Clint Frazier is a guy who could easily, and I say easily, hit 30 home runs. He's just got that kind of power, and because he uses the whole field, he can use right field at Yankee Stadium. But he's not just a home run guy. He did a lot better with taking pitches last year, with working the count, with being patient at the plate, and making sure that he got a good pitch to hit. And he had a lot of line drives for doubles and base hits. He's a guy who can turn on an inside fastball and rip it down the left field line, or he can wait on a pitch and take it to right field and either hit it out of the ballpark or just take it the other way for a base hit. We saw him do that in a number of opportunities. When he could have been swinging for the fences, he shortened up and used the whole field and took advantage of the defense, which likes to put the shift on, and that's only going to help him. It would not surprise me if Clint Frazier's a guy who had a 270 or 280 batting average, maybe a 340, 350 on base percentage, and hit 30 bombs, maybe drove in 85 runs. And with his improved defense, I mean, that's just an incredibly valuable asset that the Yankees have out there in left field. I really do hope that they give him his chance and that they don't re-sign Brett Gardner. I know that a lot of you love Brett Gardner. I love Brett Gardner. I think Brett Gardner is a great player. He's a great clubhouse guy. I think it would be nice to sign him to maybe a one-day contract in July, let him come out and play the top of the first in left field, then let him retire. So yeah, I'm really excited about Clint Frazier. Spring training begins in just a couple of weeks. I'll see you next time. Despite his somewhat up and down injury history with the Yankees, Aaron Hicks is going to go on to become one of Brian Cashman's more accoladed moves as Yankees general manager. Cashman acquired Hicks for John Ryan Murphy, a guy who's gone on to become kind of a journeyman backup catcher, while Aaron Hicks has become the starting center fielder for the New York Yankees. Aaron Hicks has had a number of great moments with the Yankees. Who could forget that home run off of Verlander in the playoffs a couple years ago? He had that great game against the Twins where he made an unbelievable catch to end the game. He's one of the best athletes on the team. Full stop. He's got a tremendous arm, though it did seem like he dialed it back a little bit on his throws last year after returning from Tommy John surgery. I can't blame him. He did say this winter that he still doesn't feel 100% from that injury. He's a switch hitter. He gets on base a ton, and he's one of the most fun guys in the league to watch hit a home run because he's got that great home run follow through. I got a lot of feedback from the audience that were unhappy that I put Aaron Hicks as the number 3 hitter in my hypothetical lineup a few weeks ago, but it turns out that's exactly what Aaron Boone is planning to do. The analytics these days say that the number 3 hitter comes up with 2 outs and nobody on base a lot of times, so you really want somebody with some good on-base percentage who can get you to that number 4 hitter who has some real power, and that's exactly what Aaron Hicks does. Even though we think of the number 3 spot in the order as traditionally a high batting average spot, Hicks doesn't really fit that mold, but he does get on base, and as they say in Moneyball, it doesn't matter if you get on base from a hit or a walk. His batting average has dropped 4 years in a row, and he's a career .235 hitter, but he also draws an enormous amount of walks, and he gets on base a ton, setting things up for Giancarlo Stanton or Luke Voit or whomever happens to be hitting behind him on that given day. His on-base percentage is actually improving, as it was a career best .379 last season, and as of halfway through spring training, it's over 400. Baseball Savant puts Hicks in the 99th percentile of walk percentage and in the 84th percentile in expected weighted on-base percentage. Now, what's that? That's a formula that's calculated using exit velocity, launch angle, and certain types of batted balls along with sprint speed. You could also argue that on-base percentage is one stat that can be reflected well in spring training because if you're not swinging out of the zone, it doesn't matter what time of year it is. It's even more promising to me because he wants to get some swings in, but he just can't bring himself to swing at something that's out of the zone or that's garbage. And I think that bringing back Brett Gardner will allow the Yankees to give Hicks some days off now and then and hopefully keep him on the field for a full season. His career high in games is 137 in 2018. And at age 31, he should continue to get stronger for a few more years, even if he does begin to slow down and lose some athleticism in his 30s. I think Hicks has a lot of value to the Yankees, and while I don't see him as a superstar center fielder, I see him as a pretty good player who, if he stays on the field, will have a lot of value. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. His patience at the plate is a great asset to the Yankees. It's a great virtue of a hitter to be extremely patient at the plate. But there are times when aggressiveness can work in your favor. Aaron Hicks is a switch hitter, so let's say he comes up against a tough right-handed pitcher late in the game with 2 outs and a runner on second and you're down by a run. At this point, a base hit will tie the game. You got probably Giancarlo Stanton on deck, who's not great against tough right-handed relief pitchers. He swings and misses at a lot of sliders in the dirt. So maybe Aaron Hicks, instead of trying to walk and pass the baton to a guy who maybe has a little bit of a disadvantage at the plate, maybe Aaron Hicks could swing at one of those fastballs early in the count and just try and do something with it. Just try and pick up a base hit up the middle, opposite way, something like that, just to get that run in. That's a situation where being aggressive can work to your advantage. So I think as long as he can make those adjustments, continue to play great defense, continue to hit those clutch home runs that he likes to hit, I think Aaron Hicks is going to have a lot of value to the Yankees, and also he needs to stay on the field. Only one more player preview left, and that's Gio Urshela. I'll try and get to it over the next few days, and then come back on March 31st because I'm going to do a live stream where I do a marathon of all of these player previews that we did over the past 6 or 8 weeks. Back to back to back to back, and a belly to belly to belly to... The Yankees signed Gerrit Cole prior to last season with the intention that he would be the final piece of a championship puzzle, the missing ingredient, something they've lacked for decades it seems, a true number 1 ace. And while the Yankees came up short and didn't accomplish their goals, Gerrit Cole did his job. He was tremendous last season. As you're about to see, He got better as the season went along, and his best starts were actually in October, something that every Yankees fan wanted to see. Gerrit Cole finished the 2021 season with a 7-3 record, a 2.84 ERA, and his third consecutive season with a sub-3 ERA. He made 12 starts, pitched 73 innings, and struck out 94 hitters, and finished fourth in the American League Cy Young voting. Even with pretty good numbers, I felt like he was getting stronger and stronger as the season went along. For instance, he reached double digits in strikeouts 3 times during the regular season, topping out at 10. But then he struck out 13 Indians in Game 1 of the Wild Card round. He made 2 starts against Tampa Bay in the division series and did not record a decision, pitching 11 1/3 innings, allowing 4 runs and striking out 17. Overall, Gerrit Cole has been a big game pitcher throughout his career, posting a 2.68 ERA in 84 career postseason innings. A quick peek at his StatCast metrics from 2020 reveals that while he gave up a lot of hard-hit balls, he also had some of the best stuff in baseball, ranking in the 93rd percentile of both fastball spin and velocity, and in the 87th percentile in whiff percentage and the 83rd percentile of curve spin. His average fastball was 97 miles an hour, and his command was in line with his career averages with just 2.1 walks per game. His whip, or walks and hits per innings pitched, was 0.959, so less than a base runner per inning, which is outstanding. And he had over 5.5 strikeouts for every walk. There is absolutely no reason to suspect that, barring injury, Gerrit Cole shouldn't have another great year in 2021, perhaps even a better year, as it seems to take him a while to really get into a groove, as evidenced by getting stronger as the year went along each of the last 3 seasons. Gerrit Cole's impact goes well beyond just what he does on the field. He's a good clubhouse guy. He gets along with everybody. He stays out of trouble. He's mentoring and tutoring the Yankees' #1 pitching prospect, Clark Schmidt. It's also worth noting that he's pretty good friends with another starting pitcher who just joined the Yankees, Jameson Taillon, from their time together in Pittsburgh. I truly believe that Gerrit Cole is going to finish in the top 2 or 3 of the Cy Young voting again in 2021. I don't know if he'll win. There's some really good pitchers in the American League, but he's got a real shot. And if he just stays healthy, and please God, let him stay healthy, the Yankees should have their ace problem solved for a while longer. Sometimes outstanding relief pitchers can come from unexpected places. For instance, Chad Green was acquired along with Luis Cessa for Justin Wilson a few years back, and Chad Green has gone on to become one of the best relief pitchers in baseball. Raleigh Fingers, Juan Franco, even Mariano Rivera. These guys were all failed starting pitchers in the big leagues. In fact, in 1995, the Yankees lost in the division series to the Seattle Mariners, partially because they had a lack of bullpen depth and had to go to Jack McDowell in Game 5. But Mariano Rivera actually emerged as a force in the bullpen in that series. Now, I'm not comparing Nick Nelson to Mariano Rivera by any stretch of the imagination, but just shedding some light on the fact that they both had very similar routes to the big leagues. They both were starters in the minor leagues, emerged out of the bullpen during their rookie season, and ended up pitching out of the bullpen in the playoffs. They both also had one extraordinary pitch. For Mariano Rivera, it was the cutter, and for Nick Nelson, it appears to be the changeup, which combined with a 98-mile-an-hour fastball can be a deadly pitch. Tommy Kahnle is an example of a guy who mixes that high-octane fastball with that really good changeup to be extra effective out of the pen. Obviously, he had the Tommy John injury, and he was actually replaced in the bullpen by Nick Nelson. Nick Nelson made his spring debut a couple of days ago, pitched 2 scoreless innings, looked really good. The Yankees are very high on this kid. He actually made his major league debut in 2020 against Boston and immediately showcased special stuff. During his brief stint in the majors, he pitched 20 2/3 innings, struck out 18, walked 11, that's too many, surrendered 4 home runs, also too many. So those numbers don't jump off the page, but once he gets the command to where it needs to be, he's got 3 legitimate strikeout pitches that he can use out of the pen. He's got a fastball that can reach 98 miles an hour. He's got the aforementioned Bugs Bunny changeup at 89 or 90 miles an hour that just dives off the table. And he's got a breaking ball that appears to me to have been created in a lab by scientists. There is no guarantee that he's going to be dominant or even really good. Control is the most important thing for any pitcher, but he's got the stuff. You cannot teach the stuff. You can teach command. If he learns to harness that fastball and spot it where he wants it to be, that changeup and that breaking ball will play. It's interesting to note that Nick Nelson pitched 2 innings in his debut when guys like Jameson Taillon and Garrett Cole pitched just 1. Nick Nelson appears to be being stretched out, perhaps as a multi-inning reliever, perhaps even to compete for the number 5 starter job. But he's got the stuff to be a lights-out relief pitcher, and I think he's going to end up eventually in the big leagues as a setup man. I think he's got that kind of stuff. He just needs to work on his control. If you were to tell me last October that the 3 starting pitchers that the Yankees would be relying on after Garrett Cole for the next October had pitched a combined 1 inning in 2020, I would have said that seems like a pretty big gamble.
Dude, I think he's doing the dice thing too much.
First of all, you've got Luis Severino coming back from Tommy John surgery. He hasn't pitched since 2019, and he didn't pitch much in 2019. Then you've got Jameson Taillon. He also hasn't pitched since 2019 because he's coming back from his second Tommy John surgery. And then finally, you've got Corey Kluber, who pitched exactly 1 inning in 2020 and has had a myriad of injuries since 2019. Brian Cashman really is rolling the dice that all these guys will work out.
Dude, I think he's doing the dice thing too much.
But Corey Kluber does have a ton of upside, and his injuries aren't as bad as they seem. 25 teams attended his throwing session in early January, and to a man, every scout in attendance said that he looked more like the Corey Kluber of old than like an old version of Corey Kluber. One reason Corey chose the Yankees was because his personal strength and conditioning coach also happens to be the Yankees' director of player performance, Eric Cressey. The first rumors of Corey's contract were that he was asking for about $8, maybe $9 million bucks, but the fact that he got $11 million from a team that's trying to stay under the luxury tax is promising. It tells me that the Yankees felt that it was a pretty good gamble.
Dude, I think he's doing the dice thing too much.
When healthy, Corey Kluber has outstanding stuff. A low to mid-90s fastball most of the time, with a lot of movement and a really nasty wipeout hook. He won the 2014 Cy Young Award, going 18-9 with a 2.44 ERA, and won the 2017 award, going 18-4 with a 2.25 ERA. In 2018, he was 20-7 with a 2.89 ERA, and he's averaged 9.8 strikeouts per 9 over his 10-year Major League Baseball career. His 2019 injuries were somewhat freak occurrences: a fractured forearm from a comebacker and an oblique strain, probably due to changing his arm motion slightly following a forearm injury. That is not uncommon. His 2020 injury was more concerning, a grade 2 tear of the teres major muscle in the back of his right shoulder. He received a platelet-rich plasma injection and did not have surgery, and he's been training with Eric Cressey to come back. The one thing working against Corey Kluber, in my opinion, is father time. The older you get, the harder it gets to come back from injuries. Granted, I'm a 37-year-old YouTuber, but I slipped on the ice last year, and I'm still sore. Of the guys coming back from injury, I think that Corey Kluber could have a chance to make the biggest impact, because Luis Severino won't be back until maybe July or August, depending on how fast the Yankees want to get him back out there. And Jameson Taillon has had these elbow issues repeatedly throughout his career, so you know they're going to want to manage his innings. I don't think Corey Kluber is going to throw more than maybe 150 innings. They're going to kind of manage his workload as well. That could allow guys like Davy Garcia and Clark Schmidt to get more tries in the major leagues. Nick Nelson came up as a starter. You might see him. But I'm still pretty confident that if healthy, Corey Kluber can be a very, very good pitcher for the Yankees. Gary Sanchez is the biggest question mark on the Yankees roster. Full stop. He can either be an unbelievable asset or he can be a huge liability. In 2020, he actually lost his grip on the starting catcher position for the first time since he took over for Brian McCann during the 2016 season. He lost his job in the postseason to Kyle Higashioka, who played pretty well on both offense and defense during limited opportunities last year. One significant factor is that the Yankees' ace, Garrett Cole, prefers throwing to Kyle Higashioka, who he played with as an amateur and who he played pretty well with in 2020. Gary Sanchez is a mystery, wrapped inside of a riddle, wrapped inside of an enigma. How can somebody with so much physical talent, who can hit the ball 500 feet, be so good and so dominant at some times and be so terrible and look like he doesn't have a clue at other times? In 2016, he hit 20 home runs as a rookie and had a 3 wins above replacement in just 53 games. In 2017, he set the franchise record for home runs by a catcher, and then he broke his own record in 2019 when he hit 34 home runs in just 106 games. But in both 2018 and in 2020, he was terrible. He had an OPS of 697 in 2018, and then a putrid OPS of 618 in 2020. He batted under 200 in both of those years, and I know that batting average doesn't hold as much weight as it used to, but you can't be hitting 1-something. You've got to get off the interstate. You've got to put some singles and doubles on the board once in a while. It can't be a home run or a strikeout every single time up at bat. And while we're being honest, I never thought he was great on defense. Despite a positive D-WAR from Baseball Reference in every season except for 2020, he just doesn't pass the eye test to me. He has issues with balls in the dirt, he makes wild throws sometimes, and it seems like 2 or 3 times a week he has a passed ball in a big spot. When he's mashing with a mid-800 OPS, you can kind of live with that sort of thing, but when you're not hitting, not playing defense, and the ace of the staff doesn't want to throw to you, you might just get benched during the most important games of the season, and that's exactly what happened to Gary Sanchez in 2020. He's got a ton of potential offensively, but honestly, I think his future is at DH, and because the Yankees already have Giancarlo Stanton locked up in that spot for most of the next decade, I think Gary Sanchez is going to be playing somewhere else in the near future. I've been watching baseball for over 30 years, and I can't think of many catchers who got better in their late 20s or on into their 30s. You just take such a huge beating at that position, you kind of are what you are. Generally, you lose mobility, you lose quickness. Your offense begins to decline. You're always getting hit by foul tips and getting run into by base runners and spiked. And it's just uncommon for catchers to continue to improve despite taking such a beating on such a regular basis. That's why I don't think Gary Sanchez is going to get significantly better at catcher. He still has a ton of power. He barrels the ball up nicely, but he's been so inconsistent that I just don't trust him. I just don't have any idea what kind of season he's going to have, but I do think that he can be a productive hitter again someday. It might not be with the Yankees. The Yankees might have tweaked him and changed him so much that he doesn't know which way is up. In my opinion, Gary Sanchez just kind of needs a fresh start somewhere else. I think he would go somewhere else and be a decent offensive force, but likely as a DH eventually. But I just don't know if it's going to happen with the Yankees because they've already got Stanton locked up. So I hope that the Yankees can get a little bit of production out of Gary Sanchez this year, but I'm not that optimistic. How's it going, everybody? Kyle Higashioka is probably going to be the Yankees' backup catcher this year. He joined the Yankees organization in 2008 and was with the Yankees for a long time before he got called up in 2017. He made history by joining Alfonso Soriano as the only Yankees in history to have home runs as their first 3 hits in the big leagues. He bounced around a lot between 2017, 2018, and 2019, and he showed that he was a capable defender. He's always looked good behind the plate, but he might have been kind of recognized as being a quadruple A hitter. And what do I mean by a quadruple A hitter? His numbers in AAA were pretty good. In 2019, he had 20 home runs and a 929 OPS at AAA, but it didn't translate into the big leagues. He never hit for much of an average. He did have a little bit of pop, but it was mostly running into mistakes. In 2020, he had arguably his best year yet. He had 250 with 4 home runs and 10 RBIs, still no walks, but he did have a 3-homer game, and he played well enough on defense that he became the personal catcher for Yankees ace Garrett Cole. He turns 31 on April 20th, so he's no spring chicken. I don't see him as the long-term option for the Yankees as a starter because he hasn't drawn a walk at the big league level since 2018, but he is the next Austin Romine, in my opinion, a long-term backup who can fill in when Gary Sanchez is hurt or when Gary Sanchez hasn't made contact in 2 weeks and you need to sit him down for a few days. I like his relationship with Garrett Cole, and I feel like Higashioka has paid his dues so long in the minor leagues that he's happy just to be here, man. I like his relationship with Garrett Cole. They're both West Coast guys. They play together as amateurs. They're going to work well together. It's really, really important for Garrett Cole to be comfortable on the mound with whoever's catching him. So I think the Yankees are going to hold on to him for a while. And he's a good guy. He's worked hard. He's paid his dues. He's just happy to be here, man. He's going to play hard. He's going to continue to play hard. He's going to continue to work. I feel like he's going to be Garrett Cole's personal catcher for a while. And for that reason, I think you're going to see him on opening day this year, and you're probably going to see him in Game 1 of the postseason if and when the Yankees get there. Domingo Germán was one of the Yankees' most dependable pitchers in 2019, and the way he began the season, he was actually one of the best pitchers in baseball for a long stretch. He began the 2019 season going 9-1 with a 2.60 ERA, and on August 13th, he was 16-2 with a 3.96 ERA with 124 strikeouts in 116 innings and a .228 batting average against. He was looking like a legitimate future front-of-the-line starter. He had completed at least 6 innings of work in 12 of his 20 starts and had completed 7 innings of work 3 times. The future was bright. He was breaking out in a big way. At just 26 years old, I was thinking this guy could be a mainstay in the rotation for maybe a decade. But then over his next several starts, his next 4 starts in fact, he had a 5.66 ERA and then he got shifted to the bullpen. It was pretty clear that he wore down and that his stuff just wasn't as crisp. His spin rate was dropping, his fastball lost a tick, and he was just giving up more home runs and not pitching as deep into the game. His last 2 appearances, though, were out of the bullpen, and they were tremendous. 4 shutout innings against Detroit, and then 2 1/3 shutout innings against the Angels, and then he ultimately was suspended by Major League Baseball for the domestic violence policy, and was going to miss most of 2020, but then the season was shortened, and he ended up missing the entire season. Ultimately, he didn't suit up at all in the majors or the minors because there was no minor league season. And Domingo was pretty much distraught over this. He even talked about retiring, which concerned Yankees fans and caused the Yankees organization to have a long conversation with him to try and get his head on straight. With the addition of Corey Kluber and Jameson Taillon, the Yankees have filled out their rotation with guys who have, let's be honest, a history of injuries. And if one of those guys goes down, it almost certainly opens up a spot for Domingo Germán in 2021. Otherwise, Domingo's probably going to compete for the number 5 spot in the rotation with Deivi Garcia and top pitching prospect Clarke Schmidt. Because he wore down in 2019 near the end of the season, though, and because he pitched so well out of the bullpen and then didn't pitch at all in 2020, I don't think it's a huge leap on my part to think that he could be headed for a bullpen spot, and I honestly think that that might be the best spot for him. He's got an upper 90s fastball, a great curveball, and as a reliever, he has a career 199 batting average against and a 2.48 career ERA as a relief pitcher, as opposed to 4.92 as a starter. In 40 innings as a reliever, he's got 52 strikeouts and allowed just 29 hits and 3 home runs. So he's a really, really good relief pitcher. If the Yankees put him in the rotation, he'll probably be pretty good for a while and then get tired in the second half during the most important games of the season. Or they could just stick him in the bullpen, and they could have a David Robertson type pitcher, a guy with a big fastball, 95 plus, and a really, really good 12-6 curveball who misses bats, can keep guys off of base, and can give you multiple innings if needed. I really like Domingo Germán for the Yankees bullpen. I think that's where he's going to end up, and I think he would be really, really effective as a relief pitcher. Just my 2 cents. If you had told me in the winter following the 2017 or really the 2018 seasons that just a few years later, a non-insignificant portion of Yankees fans would want to trade Aaron Judge, I would have said that you are out of your mind. You've lost it. But all winter, I read tweets and comments in forums from Yankees fans who think that the Yankees should just get rid of Aaron Judge. I want to make one thing clear. When healthy, and granted, he's been unhealthy a lot. Some of that is freak injuries. He got hit by a pitch. He punctured his lung diving for a ball. But when healthy, nobody is as dangerous as Aaron Judge in all of baseball, with the possible exception of Mike Trout. And not only that, Aaron Judge is a great defender. Not a good defender. Not a serviceable right fielder. He is an outstanding right fielder. In 2019, he led the American League in defensive runs saved, despite only playing in 102 games. And in 2020, he was just 1 defensive run saved behind his understudy, Clint Frazier, for 6th. In 2020, Aaron Judge appeared in just 28 games and had what looked like, to the casual observer, a down year. But he still had a phenomenal 891 OPS and a ridiculous 142 OPS plus, meaning that he was 42% better than league average. His walks were way down, and that's concerning. His on-base percentage fell to .336, down from .422 during his rookie season of 2017. His slugging percentage, though, actually went up from the previous 2 years. And when he went on the injured list with a calf injury on August 11th, after just 17 games, he was batting .290, leading the league in home runs with 9 in just 62 at-bats, and he had an otherworldly 1.101 OPS. Aaron Judge, when healthy, is quite simply unstoppable. And I don't believe he was ever truly healthy after 2 stints on the injured list. He came back for 1 game, you might remember, picked up a base hit, went 1 for 3, and then spent another 20 days on the injured list. After coming back for the second time, he had just 7 hits over his final 36 at-bats, posting a 194 average and no home runs, though he did hit a few home runs in the postseason. I invited Patrick Hennessy of Unhinged Yankees to talk about what we can expect from Aaron Judge in 2021 and whether or not he's going to be able to stay healthy. How confident are you in Aaron Judge playing, I don't know, maybe 145 games this year?
I'm going to be honest, I go into every season with optimism as far as Aaron Judge goes. But last season, that kind of changed after he started off the season red hot and then got injured. Then the optimism kind of turned into pessimism a little bit. But once again, I'm going into the season optimistic about Aaron Judge. I'm going to say that I think he does play over 145 games.
Yeah, I'd say I'm usually in the same boat where I'm optimistic going into the season. Last year when he came back and played 1 game, you remember he came back from that calf injury. He played 1 game and
Yes.
He got hurt again.
In Atlanta, I think.
He comes back and hits 194 over the final couple weeks. I don't think he was really healthy even when he came back. He played okay in the postseason. He had 3 home runs, but he wasn't the Judge we're used to, and he definitely wasn't the Judge that we saw against like the Red Sox when he was in the middle of that streak, where he was the best hitter in baseball for probably the first 3 weeks of the year. And, you know, they might have to give Judge and Stanton 1 or 2 days off a week to keep them healthy for the whole season.
I think the Yankees are going to be extremely cautious with these guys. And I think that's the main reason why they have so much outfield depth going into this year. I mean, they acquired Greg Allen. Now they acquired Jay Bruce. They might even bring back Brett Gardner along with Mike Tauchman. I believe Socrates Brito is an outfielder too, Estevan Florio. They have a bunch of outfield options that they could use so that they could possibly give Judge, Hicks, Stanton, these guys days off throughout the season, just because they want to make sure that these guys can remain healthy. Also, we saw that Stanton and Judge are doing yoga too. So, I mean, this is a sign that possibly maybe 2020 was somewhat of a wake-up call, and the Yankees realized that 2019 with all the injuries wasn't just a fluke.
You know, I've been thinking about it, and there's something about these guys where maybe it's part of the Yankees scouting philosophy or whatever to pick the most physically abnormal human beings, like the people who hit the ball the hardest, who have the quickest bat speed, who, you know, do these unbelievable feats. But there might be something about pushing the human body to the limit that causes it to break down more. Do you think that Judge and Stanton would ever consider backing off a little bit, maybe running at 70% just to keep themselves healthy? Or do you think that it's part of, you know, what makes these guys what they are, is that mental drive to go above and beyond in any given situation to try and just beat you every single day?
I think that kind of messes with your mentality a little bit. It might affect them in the box just because their mind isn't focused on just performing well. Their mind is now focused on trying to avoid injury at all costs. So you kind of don't want to change their mental philosophy, I guess. But then again, that's also just my opinion. I could definitely see though, Judge in a game against the Orioles in the middle of June, if there is a ball that's hitting the infield and he's running to first base, we might not see him running at 150% like it was game 5 of the ALDS. It's very realistic, just because, like I mentioned before, I think these guys are well aware of the fact that injuries can happen, right? Judge is a veteran of injuries now. He knows how often they happen, and with the snap of a finger, he could be out for the year. So, listen, I think this season he's going to be very cautious, and maybe he does consider maybe running at 70% throughout the season.
It's because it's hard for professional athletes to just switch it off, to tone it down. I think these guys are just going to go full out, and the Yankees are just going to have to be responsible for giving them the right training program to stay healthy. And it ultimately comes down to the trainers. These guys are athletes. You know, there's no reason that, you know, somebody like Shaquille O'Neal should be able to play into his 40s and not get hurt. and play, running up and down the court constantly, as opposed to a guy who, stands in right field or stands, to hit 3 times a game, and maybe has to run a little bit. You could make the case that maybe they should be doing more. Maybe they should be doing more running. Maybe they should be doing more sprints. Maybe Giancarlo Stanton should take fly balls in the outfield during batting practice. They used to call it playing it live. Go out there and pretend like it's a game if the ball's hit to you, and maybe that keeps you used to running around. If you watch Ichiro Suzuki, or, he doesn't play anymore, but whenever he was not actively involved in an at-bat or in a play in the field, he was always stretching. He was bending down to touch his toes. He was leaning side to side. Even when he was hitting, he would step out and squat down, you remember, and just kind of move his torso. And how many times did Ichiro Suzuki pull an oblique or a hamstring or a calf? You could probably count it on one hand if he ever did. Judge and Stanton, instead of trying to be superhuman, they need to focus on complementing each other, right? Take some of the load off of the other. You don't have to be the big man in the lineup because there's 2 of you. If you're feeling like you're worn out or whatever, speak up. Take a day off. Look, I'd forgive you for not wanting to bet the farm on a guy who had a 5.11 ERA last season. But there's a lot more to Jordan Montgomery than meets the eye, and I think he could have a pretty good year for the Yanks this year. I said during one of my recent live streams that I felt like Jordan Montgomery could surprise some people this year and get some Cy Young votes, and I almost got laughed out of my own stream. And though he may not win a Cy Young award, he proved last season that he's a guy you can go to in a big spot because he pitched well against the Rays in Game 4 of the Division Series. Forget the 5.11 ERA. His expected ERA via StatCast was 3.86, which suggests that he was unlucky. And by the way, this was his first extensive in-season action since having Tommy John surgery in 2018. His fastball velocity was surprisingly up. You might think of him as a command guy, and rightfully so. He had a 4.7% walk rate, which was in the top 8% of the league, but he also threw 29 pitches at 94 miles an hour or better and topped out at 95 miles an hour. So he's got legitimate power stuff when he needs to reach back and find it. He also was in the top 5% of the league in exit velocity against, which excites me because if you can combine soft contact with great command, especially from the left side in Yankee Stadium, you're going to have some success. Essentially what that means is that you can pitch in and around the strike zone without giving up too many hard hit balls. That's huge. That's what Andy Pettitte did all those years and what CeCe did towards the end of his career before his knee and his arm fell apart. Montgomery did give up too many home runs, 7 in 44 innings. That would pan out to about 31 over a full season. And it's not so much that he gave up homers. A lot of guys give up homers these days. It's that he gave them up with men on base. 5 of the 7 home runs that he allowed had men on base. And that's how you end up with a 5.11 ERA. For Jordan Montgomery to get better in 2021, there's 2 things he needs to do, in my opinion. He needs to pitch better out of the stretch. When you get guys on, you can't allow home runs. You got to work your cutter into righties and produce some soft contact. And lastly, like everyone else on the roster, he's got to stay healthy. He's had some injury problems, obviously the Tommy John surgery, but given a large enough sample size, I think Jordan Montgomery is going to be a damn good pitcher this year. Luke Voit is, without a doubt, one of the best 3 or 4 moves that Brian Cashman has ever made. He acquired Luke Voit from his hometown St. Louis Cardinals for Giovanni Gallegos and Chasen Shreve. And while Chasen Shreve has kind of bounced around and Giovanni Gallegos has become a pretty good reliever, the Yankees clearly dominated this trade. In his first 213 games with the Yankees, Luke Voit had 57 home runs, 147 RBIs, and his lowest OPS was in 2019 when he played half the season with a hernia and still had an OPS of 842, which was 21 points higher than Paul Goldschmidt that year. In the COVID-shortened 2020 season, Luke paced Major League Baseball with 22 home runs in 213 at-bats, which comes out to about 59 home runs over a full 162-game season, or basically what Giancarlo Stanton had during his mega MVP year in Miami. Did I mention that Luke did all of this while playing with a severe case of plantar fasciitis? Now, if you've ever had plantar fasciitis, you know how painful it can be, I've had it, and I can't imagine playing baseball every single day on it. This guy is very, very tough. The injury did require off-season surgery, and while my initial instinct was to say, well, that may have affected his off-season regimen, he also had off-season surgery prior to last season for his hernia. So I have no doubt that he's had plenty of time to put in the work and prepare for another big season. By the way, I'm recording this on the morning of February 12th, 2021, which means Luke Voit turns 30 years old tomorrow. Happy birthday, Mr. Luke Voit! Luke brings so much value on offense that I'm not really concerned with his defense at all, because late in the game, if it's a tight game, you can move DJ LeMahieu over to first base, you can move Gleyber Torres over to second base, and you can put Tyler Wade in there at shortstop. Or, worst comes to worst, you can put Mike Ford in there at first base. But Luke Voit brings so much value on offense. He works the count, he takes a lot of pitches, he barrels up the ball more than pretty much anybody in the league. Will he hit 59 home runs next season? Probably not, but I can totally see him hitting 45 home runs, drawing 75 or 80 walks, and having an OPS over 900 once again. Be ready for a big season. Everything that I've read from most of the writers around the Yankees is that Miguel Andujar is kind of on the outside looking in when it comes to the starting lineup for 2021. Obviously, he had that great rookie season in 2018, gets hurt in 2019, doesn't play much in 2020. He's had some defensive issues along the way, and so he's probably not going to be in the starting lineup, but I wanted to do a season preview for him anyway, just to remind people how good he was before he got injured and what his main struggles were, and hopefully he can improve on those things, because I really like Miguel Andujar as a player. He's a fun guy, he has a ton of energy, he has a nice dynamic of a contact hitter who also has a bit of power, has a little bit of speed. I wish he could get a little bit better on defense, but it sounds like the Yankees are going to kind of move him around the infield this spring to see what he can give them. So here's a quick preview on Miguel Andujar as he approaches the 2021 season. Miguel Andujar, before his shoulder injury, was one of the most exciting young hitters in baseball. I'm going to run through his 2018 numbers because I feel like some people may need a refresher on just how good this guy was. 149 games, 47 doubles, 2 triples, 27 home runs, 92 RBIs, an 855 OPS, a 130 OPS plus, and a 4.9 offensive wins above replacement. Best of all, just 97 strikeouts, in an age when it's not uncommon for guys to strike out way over 100 times. He was electric. There were only 2 problems. He didn't walk a ton, and his defensive WAR was negative 1.8. But both of these seemed like areas where he could improve, because he was called up from the minor leagues kind of ahead of his time just because his bat was so good. He was still a few years away from his prime, so I felt like he was going to get better. Flash forward to 2019. He has a great spring. He looks better defensively. And then, at the home opener versus Baltimore, he crushes 2 balls that just missed going out of the ballpark, and you're thinking, man, Miggy is going to have a monster year. But then there's this weird play at third base where he's diving back into third and he tore his labrum in his shoulder. The labrum is essentially some tissue that helps your shoulder joint function properly. I tore mine in February of 2008, and it basically cost me all of my velocity. He tries to play through it, but it's obvious that he isn't swinging the bat with any kind of authority. His OPS dropped from 130 in 2018 to negative 26 in 2019. He batted 128 with no extra base hits in 12 games. He ends up having the labrum surgery and missing the rest of the 2019 season. And by the way, this was the same surgery that Greg Bird had, and from which he's still yet to recover. By the way, Greg Bird just signed with his hometown Colorado Rockies, and I'm really rooting hard for him to return to form. In 2020, having lost his job to Gio Urshela in his absence, Miggy appeared in just 21 games. He batted .242 with 1 home run and 5 RBIs, and just 2 doubles and 1 triple. His exit velocity was way down, but I don't know if we should necessarily read too much into that, because over a small sample size, numbers can be misleading. If you're not getting regular at-bats, of course you're not going to be hitting the ball very hard consistently. That brings me to 2021. Miguel Andujar has absolutely raked in every single spring training, so expect that to happen again. In fact, Greg Bird used to rake in spring training too, now that I mention it. But what I'm more looking forward to is seeing how he's improved defensively. Yankees manager Aaron Boone says that he'll be taking reps at first base, at third base, and at the outfield positions. If he can just make the routine plays and not cost the team runs, his bat should get him in the lineup. But if the Yankees feel like his defensive struggles are hindering the team, then he'll probably end up in AAA getting regular at-bats so that he can put up some numbers and raise his trade value back to pre-injury levels. If there's a universal DH in the near future, I think the Yankees could use Andujar as a trade chip because his bat does have some potential. Even if he's not what he used to be, I think he's young enough that he can still kind of work his way through this injury, and he showed enough at the end of 2020 that he doesn't appear to be as lost as Greg Bird was when he came back from his injury. I really hope that Miguel Andujar is able to find some success with the Yankees in 2021, even if it's as a utility infielder. And typically you don't give the utility infielder job to somebody who struggles defensively, but his bat is good enough that he just might make it happen. Tell me what you think about Miguel Andujar and what you think the Yankees should do with him in the comments. I'll see you next time. I could not have possibly been more excited when the Yankees traded for 2017 National League MVP Giancarlo Stanton. He was coming off of a 59 home run season. He had 18 home runs in August of that year, and he was going to be protecting the Yankees' newest slugger, Aaron Judge, who had hit 52 home runs and really should have been the MVP of the American League. His first quote as a Yankee was that he feels sorry for the baseballs. I was excited. I was bout it. I actually thought he was as good as could have been expected in 2018. Judge got hurt and Stanton led the team in home runs. He kind of carried the team down the stretch. He had a big home run in the playoffs that year against Oakland. I thought he did fine. I mean, you can't hit 59 home runs every year. That was kind of an absurd expectation for us. But the last two seasons have been kind of a range of disappointment to utter dominance in the postseason last year. And so I feel like the range of possible outcomes for Giancarlo Stanton in 2021 is pretty much the biggest range of anybody on the team. He is the hardest player to project because he could easily hit 60 home runs, or he could play 15 games and miss the rest of the season with minor hamstring pulls. Both of those outcomes are totally realistic in my opinion. 2020 actually started off pretty well for Giancarlo Stanton. He went deep in each of the first two games against the Nationals, the second of which went 483 feet. And he actually managed to stay healthy for a couple of weeks before he missed another month and a half with what's become a routine occurrence for him, a leg injury. But then he comes back for the postseason, and he has one of the most ridiculous stretches I've ever seen from any player in any postseason ever. He hits 6 home runs and has 13 RBIs in 7 postseason games against some of the best pitching in the American League. He hit them to all fields. He hit them to left field. He hit them to right field. He hit that grand slam to center field. He was Superman. He was superhuman. And honestly, I give Giancarlo Stanton a hard time, but I've heard that he's been working on correcting some of the issues that have kept him off the field. He's working on more flexibility. He's spending less time on the weights. Look, when your average exit velocity is as high as it is for Giancarlo Stanton, and you hit the ball as hard consistently, you don't need to get that much stronger. You just need to stay on the field. You need to stay flexible. You need to get your at-bats, and the home runs, the power will come. You don't need to hit it 483 feet. Usually, 400 feet will do. Giancarlo was one of the best outfielders in baseball before he came to the Yankees, and I actually thought he played pretty well out there in left field his first season with the York. But because of the constant leg injuries, the Yankees have been forced to turn their $25 million man into an everyday DH. At least, you wish he would play every day. It's been more like once a month DH, and then spending another month on the injured list. However, with his new approach to flexibility, less weight training, I feel like this is the year that he's finally realized that his body has changed. He's not the same type of player that he was in his mid-20s. He's gotten older. He's gotten more fragile. He needs to be careful with how he plays the game. He can't play with reckless abandon on the bases. He obviously can't play the outfield. If he can just stay in the lineup and swing the bat, take it at about maybe 70% on the bases. Don't go for extra bases unless it's a do or die late in the season. And basically just try and stay healthy. then he should be able to put up a monster year. He hits the ball so hard and so consistently hard that he's pretty much guaranteed to have between 35 and 50 home runs if he gets 520 plate appearances, which I think he will do if he has worked sufficiently on his flexibility. Look, if you go through the StatCast record books, Giancarlo's name is all over the place. He hit some of the hardest balls in baseball last year, despite only playing in a few games. And the year before, same deal. Year before that, same deal. Every year he consistently crushes the baseball. I don't know if he's going to be hitting the ball 120 plus miles an hour this year, since he's gone back on the weight training. But if he hits it 115, that's still better than pretty much everybody in the league, and it will still do a lot of damage. Deivi Garcia entered the 2020 season as the Yankees' number 2 or number 3 prospect, depending on which prospect rankings you read. He struggled a bit before spring training was shut down on March 12th, but after some mechanical tweaks, including moving to the other side of the rubber, he came back strong in late August when he was finally called up for his Major League cup of coffee. As a prospect, he was often compared to Pedro Martinez, obviously a Hall of Fame pitcher, so lofty expectations to live up to. But mostly he was compared because he's short of stature. He threw 97 miles an hour as a minor leaguer, we saw it in the Futures game, and he seemed to have a lot of poise. When he arrived on August 30th to the big leagues, he actually pitched pretty well from there on out. He actually got a start in the playoffs. We all know about the debacle in Game 2 of the division series. But what struck me was that his velocity was down. His fastball averaged just 92 miles an hour, though he did have a good curveball, a good changeup, and pretty good command to go with it, so he was pretty serviceable as a pitcher. Overall, he made just 6 starts in his first cup of coffee with the New York Yankees, pitching 34 1/3 innings, while going 3-2 with a 4.98 ERA and 33 strikeouts to just 6 walks. His control was really impressive. He basically had the same strikeout to walk ratio that Garrett Cole had last season, 5.5 to 1. His fielding independent pitching was 4.15, and his whip was a very promising 1.19. Again, this kid is just 21 years old, and he's going to continue to improve. He did allow 6 home runs, which is too many for 34 innings, but that should also improve as he gets to know the league and gets used to pitching in Yankee Stadium. I invited Jason Surge, a fellow YouTube content creator, onto the show to discuss Deivi Garcia, as we both saw Pedro in his prime, and we wanted to discuss whether or not the comparison between Garcia and Pedro Martinez was a fair one. What are your impressions of Deivi Garcia early on?
I like the fact that he's able to keep his control through the ups and downs, which kind of shows poise. I don't know, the jury still remains as to whether he's going to be maybe a 3 or a 4. I'd be surprised if he was higher than that, but that said, I would not be surprised if he progressed along the way. But right now, I think he's headed in the right direction. As long as they nurture him, and I think he's in good hands with Matt Blake. I agree with you there 100%. And I think they'll do the right job in nurturing him as to developing his strengths while working on the weaknesses. But I do like, and that thing stood out to me, is throughout the ups and downs, he kept his control. And that's something, it's a characteristic not a lot of pitchers have. A lot of them fizzle when that happens, and he didn't do that. It's an important component, or just an important trait in my opinion. So I think he's headed in the right direction. I think at the end of the day, I think he'll be a number 3 or a number 4. I just hope that it's with the Yankees.
Yeah. So I see a lot of people comparing him to Pedro, and as somebody who watched Pedro, I just don't see it. Pedro was 99-100 with pinpoint control and 3 wipeout pitches. I see Deivi Garcia as more of like a Giordano Ventura type, like a guy who could be, you know, if he tops out, like you said, a number 3, maybe a number 2, in my opinion, somebody who maybe wins 14 to 15 games, maybe a 3.5 ERA. I think that's fine. And I would sign up for that for, 5 or 6 years of that. And then, when it's time for a big contract, let somebody else pay for it. But, a guy his size, generally, in my opinion, doesn't last deep into their 30s. So you need to get as much as you can out of him for the next 4 or 5 years. Let him pitch. Don't let him spend those bullets at AAA. Get everything that you can out of him now. And then hopefully, he maxes out quickly. I think he really could be a number 3. I don't see him as a Pedro. I know they're from the same town. I know the same size, but the way the ball came out of Pedro's hand, I mean, you watched it. It was different.
Pedro was 125-pound Bob Gibson.
Yeah, very much.
He's special.
Yep, that night that he struck out 17 Yankees at Yankee Stadium. Usually I'm pissed off watching somebody dominate the Yankees, but that night I was like, we're watching a Hall of Fame performance tonight. This is the best it's been done in my lifetime. And I still remember that night, I knew around the 4th or 5th inning, I think Chili Davis hit a home run to break up a no-hitter maybe. Yeah. But I remember thinking, like, if Boston puts some runs on the board, this game's over, because Pedro is absolutely filthy. And he had that look in his eye like, you're not going to touch me tonight. And I see that Davy Garcia has a little bit of that killer instinct. He's got that kind of mentality, and that's why people compare him to Pedro, but he just doesn't have the stuff. He just does not have that 100-mile-an-hour consistent fastball. Go back and watch the 1999 All-Star game when he buzzed his way through Sosa, McGuire, and I think Larry Walker, maybe a few other guys. That was really the peak of Pedro's career. But compare that to Davy Garcia. Aside from their stature, it's no comparison.
No. And Pedro is, again, he's dominant. He's one of the probably the top 5 right-handed pitchers in probably in all of history. Definitely in my lifetime, definitely the best. And it was fun. As much as I hated him on the Red Sox, and it is what you had to tip your cap to him every time he pitched, pretty much for the most part. And a lot of folks don't remember, he was teammates with Randy Johnson earlier in their careers with the Expos.
Yeah, that was a good team.
With them being teammates moving forward, it would have been crazy.
And that Expos team had a lot of good players coming up. They had the Larry Walkers, they had Moises Alou, they had John Wetland until he came to the Yankees. They were notorious for developing players, and then it just kind of, fizzled with the fans, and they had to move the franchise. How's it going, everybody? Today is Super Bowl Sunday, and I know a lot of you are very excited about football. I'm very excited about baseball because spring training opens up in just a couple of weeks. One guy that I am very excited about and very anxious about, quite frankly, is Gleyber Torres. Now, Gleyber Torres had kind of a down year in 2020 after a tremendous year in 2019, in which he hit 38 home runs, had 90 RBIs, wasn't great defensively, but wasn't terrible. Last year, he was pretty terrible on defense, and he was pretty bad on offense, too. Brian Cashman mentioned that after the March 12th shutdown of spring training, when players had to kind of disperse to their own areas of the world, Gleyber Torres was not able to stay in shape the way he would have if he was with the team. He came back to summer camp and he was a bit overweight. Even the people in the press box, the baseball writers, the broadcasters, they all noticed it. And Gleyber Torres seemed to have lost 2 or 3 steps. On offense, his bat was not as quick, and he got off to kind of a slow start. I didn't notice it. I just noticed that he didn't seem like Gleyber Torres, the Gleyber Torres we had come to know and love. Now, after you get off to a slow start offensively, you can put pressure on yourself. You can begin to want to do more damage, go up there every time trying to hit a grand slam, even if there's nobody on base. He started to get pull happy instead of using the whole field as we're accustomed to seeing him do. He's really a line-to-line hitter when he's right. But as the season went along, he began to show signs of the Gleyber Torres that we're all used to. I remember in particular there was a series up there at Salem Field where he was hitting ropes all over the ballpark. He was hitting home runs. He was hitting doubles. He just seemed like the dynamic Gleyber Torres that we'd all gotten used to. And then when the playoffs began, he did really well against Cleveland and then pretty well against the Rays. He had a big home run against the Indians and then hit a monster home run in Game 4 of the division series against the Tampa Bay Rays. And it's because of this improvement and the fact that he was out of shape, and now apparently, according to scouts and according to Brian Cashman and according to some of the coaches that have spoken on the subject, Gleyber Torres has lost some weight. He's gotten into shape. He's gotten more nimble. He's gotten more agile. I think he's going to have a good year. I think he's going to have a bounce back year and maybe improve on the numbers that he had in 2019 when he was so dynamic. Entering the 2020 season, Fangraphs projected Gleyber Torres to have 42 home runs and basically be an MVP caliber player. They were projecting him to have A-Rod level of production as a 23-year-old. That would have put him up there with one of the best shortstops offensively of all time. And I don't think that that's just evaporated into thin air because of one bad 60-game stint. Also, everyone got hurt last year, and Gleyber Torres kind of had to carry the load on more than one occasion. he basically became the go-to guy, and he's a bit young to take that kind of pressure. I think that a rededicated Gleyber Torres, a guy who has all the potential in the world, all of the hand-eye coordination in the world. By the way, he hit really well when he was wearing those glasses, which he said were not prescription, but when he took them off, he didn't do quite as well, so maybe he should just leave them on. But anyway, he started swinging the bat much better towards the end of the season, and I think if he shows up and he's in shape and has a good spring, I think we can look for good things from Gleyber Torres in 2021. Let me know in the comments what you think Gleyber Torres is going to do this year and who else you're excited about. I'm happy to do a video on anybody who you're excited about. I've got one coming up on Clint Frazier. He's become very, very valuable to the Yankees, the way he can play defense, the way he can spray the baseball all over the ballpark. So watch out for one of those. And let me know how you like the new camera. This is kind of a new setup that I've got. I got dongles and cables everywhere, but hey, it is what it is. Comes with being a YouTuber. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Tonight's prediction, Bucks 24, Chiefs 21. At a time talking about the Yankees' current third baseman, Gio Urshela, a guy who I feel is somewhat underrated by baseball fans around the league, but Yankees fans know that this guy can really, really play. Since he was acquired by Brian Cashman for cash considerations, he's really stepped up. And he really stepped up in a big way when Miguel Andujar got hurt a couple of years ago. He had surgery in the offseason to remove a bone chip from his elbow, but had a great year once again in 2020 despite missing some time with the aforementioned elbow injury. Batted .298 with 6 home runs and 30 RBIs, and was once again terrific on defense. His OPS was .858. And for all of the talk of the Yankees signing Manny Machado a few years back, Gio has put up basically Machado-level production for a fraction of the cost. He posted a 2.1 wins above replacement in 2020 in just 43 games. And over a full 162-game season, that projects to a 7.8 WAR. Overall, in 2 seasons with the Yankees, his OPS is 133. That puts him 33% above league average. Outstanding. His defensive stats, while impressive, 0.5 wins above replacement or defensive wins above replacement 2 years ago, and then 0.7 in 2020, are one of the reasons why I don't really trust the defensive metrics yet, because this guy is way better than that. Just watching him, he's one of the best third basemen I've ever seen in baseball. Definitely one of the best I've ever seen for the Yankees in my 30-plus years. He's a better third baseman than Alex Rodriguez. He's a better third baseman than Robin Ventura. He's a better third baseman than Wade Boggs, and he's a better third baseman than Scott Brosius. Those are the main starting third basemen. Obviously, we had Kevin Youkilis for a bit. Obviously better than Kevin Youkilis. So, Gio Urshela is a guy who I think could be a major impact for the Yankees this year if he comes back strong. He is not going to be ready for the beginning of spring training, but he says, and Brian Cashman and the coaching staff says, that he should be ready for opening day. So keep him on your watch list for your fantasy league team, because he could be a guy that you could pick up at a value and really get some production out of. By the way, Gio posted some pictures on Instagram of these new hats with this new logo that he's got. That's how you know he's made it. He's got his own brand. Looking good. I might have to get me one of those hats. Next, I want to talk about the Bulls. A couple of years ago, the Yankees were rumored to be linked to Manny Machado and Bryce Harper, and there was rumors that they could even sign both of them. And so when the Yankees signed DJ LeMahieu, the reaction from the fan base was kind of subdued.
Everybody says, huh? What?
Especially because he's a second baseman, and the Yankees already had a second baseman in Gleyber Torres. But the fact is, DJ LeMahieu has been basically the Yankees' best player for 2 years running, and it hasn't even really been close. In fact, as I was researching this video, I noticed that his numbers were way better than I even realized. It's easy to forget how good he is because he doesn't hit 500-foot home runs or have fancy bat flips or anything like that. He's just incredibly consistent, and he's just out there to beat you. In 2020, DJ led Major League Baseball with a .364 batting average and finished third in the AL MVP voting. And I know batting average isn't as big a deal these days as it used to be, but .364 is pretty damn good. He led the team with a 3.0 wins above replacement, despite missing 16% of the team's games with a hand injury, and he hit an insane .423 in the Bronx and still batted .306 on the road. He hit 10 home runs and posted a 177 OPS plus, meaning that he was 77% above league average on offense. Just as a frame of reference, he had a higher WAR and OPS plus than Mike Trout, who actually appeared in more games than DJ. It's no wonder DJ wanted to get paid. One thing that makes DJ so valuable is he can also play defense all over the field. In 2020, he appeared in 37 games at second, 11 games at first, and 11 games at third. He was also the DH one time. He's nicknamed the Machine for a reason, because machines are incredibly consistent. In his first year with the Yankees, he had a 135 OPS plus, an 893 OPS, and finished fourth in the MVP voting, was an All-Star, and a Silver Slugger winner. DJ did the Yankees a big favor this winter. It's typical for guys to want to get as much money as possible when they hit the free agent market, and while DJ did want to get paid, what seemed to be more important to him was long-term security. He wanted a 5-year deal. The Yankees only wanted to go 3 or 4 years, but they made an arrangement where they would basically pay him for 6 years, give him $90 million, and allow the Yankees to stay under the luxury tax threshold by keeping his average annual value at $15 million. DJ will be 32 years old this year, and so I don't expect him to play at the Mike Trout level for an entire season, but he still will be pretty good. I don't expect him to keep up that .423 batting average at home because that's just ridiculous, and over a larger sample size that should come down a little bit, so don't expect him to hit .364 or higher this year. But if he hits .330 at home and .270 on the road, kind of regresses a little bit towards the mean, he's still a .300 hitter. His power will probably still go up because he's playing at Yankee Stadium. He's kind of gotten used to taking advantage of that short right field porch. And his defense should be great as always. He may regress a little bit defensively as time goes on and as age catches up with him, but that really shouldn't start for another couple of years. He should be pretty solid for the next 2 to 3 years at least. DJ is quickly becoming one of my favorite Yankees of all time just because of his ruthless efficiency. He's just so consistent day in and day out. He doesn't try and hit home runs every time. He uses the whole field. He can put the ball in play. He's really solid on defense. He can run the bases. He's a nice guy. He's a good clubhouse guy. And it's evident from watching him that he's just got that kind of quiet confidence, that quiet will to win of somebody like a Derek Jeter or a Tino Martinez, kind of a throwback to that late 90s dynasty, which is why I think it was so important that the Yankees brought him back. He's the type of player that you need to win a championship. Tell me how you think DJ will do in the comments. And as always, look for more previews coming up this week as we prepare for spring training. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, here's a rundown of what you'll find here this season. Pre-game shows and post-game reactions from most Yankees games. I also do a podcast, 15 to 20 minutes if it's solo, 30 to 45 if I have a guest. Also prospects, rumors, and breakdowns. And don't miss the Martian Tracker, where I will post periodic updates of the Yankees' #1 prospect, Jasson Dominugez, as he makes his way to the major leagues. Please like and subscribe. It helps other Yankees fans find the channel. I'll see you next time. Legendary manager Earl Weaver once said, "Your momentum is only as strong as your next day's starting pitcher." Good pitching almost always beats good hitting. Yankees fans know that. And for that reason, pitching tends to be the X factor in baseball. The better the pitchers on your roster, the better the chance you have to win, period. A great rotation is nothing without a great bullpen. And even a great bullpen can get overtaxed if you have to use it too much due to a lack of quality starting pitching. For the Yankees, the pitching staff has a wide range of outcomes in 2021. General Manager Brian Cashman, in an effort to keep the team under the luxury tax, opted not to sign top free agent pitcher Trevor Bauer or to empty the farm system for young talent like Luis Castillo, but rather to bet big on players returning from injury to back up their ace, Garrett Cole. So let's start with Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole was signed prior to the 2020 season to put the Yankees over the top. And after a dominating run in Houston, Garrett Cole has put together a very nice beginning to his career in the Bronx. Took the ball 12 times and went 7-3 with a 2.84 ERA. He's one of 3 starting pitchers in Major League Baseball to have a sub-3 ERA in each of the last 3 seasons. And he saved the best start of his season for the playoffs, striking out 13 Indians to help the Yankees defeat Cy Young winner Shane Bieber. Cole will be 30 years old in 2021, and having shown no signs of injury troubles over the past few years, he's expected to be healthy and to take the ball for the Yankees atop the rotation at least 30 times. He's a legitimate Cy Young contender in 2021. Speaking of Cy Youngs, the Yankees' number 2 man in the rotation is expected to be 2-time Cy Young Award winner Corey Kluber. Since winning 20 games in 2018, Kluber's injuries, including a fractured forearm from a comebacker, have held him to just 8 starts and 36 2/3 innings over the past 2 seasons. And at age 35, you'd be justified if you were skeptical that he could start 32 games or pitch 200 innings in 2021. The Yankees, though, are hoping that he can throw maybe 150 or 160 innings, as they rely on some of their other depth pieces that we'll talk about later to give Kluber some rest and keep him healthy for the playoffs. This video was created shortly after Corey Kluber's first spring training outing, in which veteran Yankees beat writer Brian Hoke described his outing as surgical. Kluber signed a 1-year, $11 million deal to join the Yankees in 2021. He's in great shape, thanks in part to his personal trainer Eric Cressey, who also happens to lead the Yankees' strength and conditioning program. He's motivated to earn another contract, and this may be his last chance to win a World Series, so you can bet that he's going to leave it all on the field and give the Yankees everything that he's got, which is really all you can ask of a man. At the number 3 spot in the rotation, I slot in Jordan Montgomery. He may end up as the number 4 man in the rotation, which he was during the 2020 ALDS when he shut down the Rays to help the Yankees win their final game of the season. Montgomery was one of Fangraph's picks to have a breakout year in 2020 as he returned from Tommy John surgery, but despite having decent metrics, his overall numbers were not that impressive. It should be noted, though, that they picked him to break out again in 2021, now that he should have a full 162-game season to work with. Drawing inspiration and advice from Yankees legend Andy Pettitte, Montgomery continues to improve and to learn about pitching at the big league level. He's never going to be that 15 strikeout in a game guy, but he may very well be a 15 win guy, as his command and soft contact percentage should allow him to have efficient innings and pitch deep into games. Montgomery's a guy I expect to have a lot of quality starts, that's 6 innings or better and 3 runs or less. When combined with the Yankees' high-scoring offense, that should translate into better numbers for Montgomery in 2021. He's my pick for like 15 or 16 wins and probably a 3.5 ERA. Very Andy Pettitte-like numbers. Next up in the rotation, or possibly earlier in the rotation, is former number 2 overall draft pick and 2-time Tommy John surgery recipient Jameson Taillon. Taillon came up with the Pirates a year after Garrett Cole did. He's just 29 years old, and he carries the prototypical pitcher's frame. He's 6'5", 230 pounds. An awkward throwing motion led to 2 aforementioned Tommy John surgeries, but he's rebuilt his mechanics from the ground up, shortening his arm extension, using his legs more, and taking significant stress off of his twice reconstructed elbow. Early results this spring have been encouraging. His fastball is almost at pre-injury velocity. He was 93-94 last time out. He was about 94.7 in his final season with Pittsburgh. And the refined mechanics have made his already terrific control even better, it seems. One plus for Jameson Taillon is that he's always been pretty good at keeping the ball in the ballpark, and that will come in handy at Yankee Stadium. Taillon is my pick for Comeback Player of the Year. The number 5 spot in the rotation is going to be one of the more fun battles to watch in spring training. Let's start with the front runner, in my opinion, Domingo Germán. Domingo Germán has gone from being an unbelievably good story during his rookie season, coming from out of nowhere to win 18 games, to one of the more polarizing players on the team due to his very public domestic violence incident, which led to a suspension for the duration of the 2020 season and multiple social media meltdowns. But if you can somehow get this young man into a good place mentally, on and off the field, there's no question about his talent. He showcased a much improved and frankly incredible changeup in his first spring training outing, which will pair nicely with his elite curveball spin and his upper 90s fastball. The only thing that can hold back Domingo Germán is Domingo Germán. Root for him or don't, it's your choice. But a positive outcome for Domingo Germán could mean big things for the Yankees in 2021. Deivi Garcia is the likely number one contender for a spot in the rotation should something happen to the previous 5 guys I've mentioned. He turns 22 years old on May 19th, and after an impressive cup of coffee in 2020, he's established himself as having a legitimate future in the rotation. Utilizing late life on his fastball, which is effective despite its below average velocity, along with an absolutely devastating curveball, great command, and extremely advanced poise for someone his age, the 5'9" Garcia completed 6 innings or more in 4 of his 6 appearances, and completed 7 innings twice. That's a lot of numbers. Here's some more. During his first 4 starts in the major leagues, his ERA stood at 3.28, before ballooning to 4.98 over his final 2 starts. This suggests that the league may have made some adjustments to Garcia. This is normal. It's now on Garcia to make his own adjustments so that he can become the pitcher that the Yankees believe he can be. It's also easy to forget about Luis Severino because he won't be joining the team until midsummer at least. But before his injury troubles began in 2019, he was one of the best pitchers in baseball. He finished 3rd in the Cy Young voting in 2017 and 9th in 2018, and he's been basically hurt ever since. If he can regain his form following Tommy John surgery, as many pitchers before him have done, then watch out. Other rotation candidates as the season goes along. Clark Schmidt, a former first-round draft pick whose only experience above Double-A is his 6 1/3 innings with the Yankees last year. He's got great stuff, but he's currently dealing with an elbow strain, his 2nd elbow injury in recent memory. Command issues plagued him in 2021, but the Yankees seem to believe in him. And I think that eventually he'll put it all together and he'll probably benefit from a few months in AAA to start the season. Michael King is another guy who the Yankees like. He'll be just 26 years old in 2021, and he's added a few ticks to his velocity over the winter. He mostly relies on a sinker, but needs to consistently keep it low in the strike zone in order for it to be effective, something he's had issues with. Perhaps he can benefit from being teammates with another Yankees reliever, one known for his sinker, Zach Britton. Britton, who will be 33 years old in 2021, has been nothing short of fantastic during his 3 years with New York, posting a 2.14 ERA over 105 innings pitched. He did not allow a single home run in 2020 and has allowed just 11 over his past 6 years. Aroldis Chapman is the Yankees' closer, and despite serving up some big home runs in the postseason over the past few years, you really can't argue with his regular season success. Aroldis averaged 17 strikeouts per 9 in 2020 and has averaged 14.9 strikeouts per 9 for his career over 563 games. That is insanity. Chad Green is probably the Yankees' next best reliever. He relies on a high spin rate fastball and has an improving breaking ball. He's been pretty reliable over his Yankees career, posting a 3.19 ERA over 191 appearances since 2016. He seems to have a couple of weeks every year where he can't really get it together. Recently, he had to be sent back down to the minor leagues, but he always seems to put it together by the time the Yankees reach the postseason. This winter, the Yankees signed left-handed pitcher Justin Wilson, a lefty who's not a lefty specialist. He can get both righties and lefties out because he hides the ball very well. He's another good spin rate guy. He's a solid middle reliever. Other Yankees you're bound to see this season are Jonathan Loaizaga, Johnny Lasagna, a 26-year-old 5'11 righty with a 98-mile-an-hour fastball who was very productive in 2020, going 3-0 with a 3.52 ERA. You'll also see recent free agent pickup Darren O'Day, a sidearm slinger who doesn't throw very hard but is incredibly effective. Let's not forget Luis Cessa, who came over to the Yankees with Chad Green and has shown a lot of improvement over the past few years. Also, don't be shocked to see Lucas Luetke emerge. He hasn't pitched much in the big leagues. In fact, he hasn't pitched since 2015, but he's looked amazing this spring and really gives me Graham Lloyd vibes. Other bullpen candidates include Adam Warren and Yolis Chacin. Do the Yankees have enough pitching? As with their lineup, it's just going to come down to health. But the way things have looked this spring, I feel pretty good right now. Aaron Boone said yesterday that as far as he knows, everyone is healthy going into spring training, and barring any major injuries over the next couple of weeks, the Yankees might finally have that Death Star lineup that everybody's been looking forward to for the past few years. A few people have asked me how I would set up my lineup for 2021, so I figured I would take you through it real quick.
I'm the leadoff batter, shooting dice in the dugout, they gon' walk me, it don't matter, moving up the ladder.
leadoff hitter is who else? DJ LeMahieu, the machine. He's coming off of a season in which he won the Major League Batting Championship and was on an incredible 9 wins above replacement pace if it had been a full 162-game season. He's the perfect table setter for the big power guys beneath him. And when someone from the bottom of the lineup gets on base, he turns the lineup over nicely and can force the opposition to make stressful pitches with men on base to the heart of the Yankees order. That's a recipe for disaster. The analytics guys and gals will tell you that the number 2 spot in the order is where you should put your best hitter these days. And when Aaron Judge is healthy and has a decent rhythm going, he's not only the best hitter on the Yankees, he's probably a top 3 hitter in all of Major League Baseball. He hits the ball harder than anyone, and he has immense power to all fields. He's got a great eye, better than the umpires oftentimes, as he gets more balls below his strike zone called as strikes against him than anyone in baseball. Maybe he should occasionally look for one of those pitches, crouch down a little bit, and rake it up the middle at about 115 miles an hour. Then maybe pitchers would be more hesitant to go down there. As far as Judge goes, if he's healthy, he's deadly, and he's in my number 2 spot.
I wanna hit something, rip something, stick something, hand sagging in my batting stand, setting ready. The pitch coming, double up like Ozzy do, halves, 50s, and poppers too. We robbing you like over the wall grab.
Aaron Hicks is my number 3 hitter for a couple of reasons. He can hit from the left side, so he breaks up the string of righties. He gets on base a ton, and with all the dudes you got coming up next, you're going to want people on base, I promise. Hicks isn't a batting average guy, but he's always taking pitches and making the pitcher work. He has power from both sides of the plate, and if he can stay healthy, he's probably a 4 to 5 win player in 2021, at least. My cleanup hitter is St. Louis native and 2020 Major League Baseball home run champion, Luke Voit. Luke has been nothing short of fantastic since coming to the Yankees. Immense power, takes pitches, great clubhouse guy, improving defense, we think. And you got him for what was, at the time, spare parts. Luke Voit was on a 59 home run pace last season, which coincidentally was his new uniform number. I don't think 59 home runs is realistic for 2021, but his old number, 45, sounds well within reach.
Well known, line drive, head gone, headstrong, dirty ENT, get in that ass.
Giancarlo Stanton is my number 5 hitter, or after DJ LeMahieu singles to start the game and Judge hits a 2-run home run, he's your second number 3 hitter in the first inning. Stanton has been spending less time in the weight room this offseason in order to focus on more flexibility, with his objective being to stay on the field and to avoid nagging muscle pulls. When Stanton hits them, they stay hit. So maybe his home runs won't go 485 feet anymore, but 445 is still plenty to get the job done. If Stanton is healthy and in the lineup all season, do you honestly think he's not going to hit 40 home runs? He might even hit 50 or 60. Hell, he could even hit 70. That's how good he is. We all saw in the postseason what he's capable of.
Everybody like you the best, so I got the dirty medallion with diamonds on my chest. They got me playing.
Gleyber Torres is my number 6 hitter. In 2019, he had a really great offensive season with 38 home runs, and he's a guy who will adjust his approach to make contact and pick up a base hit if needed. He hits line to line, and in 2020, the COVID shutdown really affected him, and his numbers were down, but he ended up playing very well in the postseason and hit a crucial home run in Game 4 of the Division Series to help the Yankees force a Game 5. He also works the count and takes a lot of pitches, make sure he gets a good pitch to hit. I like him offensively. He's still young, so if he dedicates himself to getting in shape this spring and going into the season feeling good, I have no doubt that he'll bounce back to the player he was in 2019 and maybe even get better.
Bricks like a demolitionist, never miss a hit. First round draft pick, money stretched long like elastic.
Clint Frazier is finally getting his shot, and I am excited. He's my number 7 hitter. This guy has bat speed as good as anyone in the league. He dedicated himself last year to improving, and it yielded amazing results. Word around the campfire is he's hungry to take this left field spot and run with it. Aside from the motivation of personal pride, a good season could bring him a significant financial payday, as the Yankees may want to lock him up long term.
Well, you should see me now. White
Gary Sanchez is my number 8 hitter. He's still got as much power as any catcher in the league, and he's lost a significant amount of weight this offseason while playing winter ball. The reports are that he looks good, and that's encouraging, but he needs to not put too much pressure on himself if he gets off to a bad start. The Yankees have a ton of offense, and they can carry Sanchez if he's hitting for power, but you've got to do better than 147 this year. If Sanchez hits 230 with 25 to 30 home runs and improves a bit defensively in big spots, I'll take it. Anything else is a bonus. It's also worth noting that he's catching Garrett Cole's first bullpen in Tampa right now.
Finally see my dream like Martin Luther the King. Pockets fat 'cause I've been eating since a 99. Put rhymes between fine lines. Time to
Gio Urshela is hitting over 300 as a Yankee and has been one of the Yankees' best hitters for the past 2 years. And I've got him hitting 9th. I'm sure he's going to love this video. Shout out to Gio if you're watching. The reason I put him 9th is because he's a great contact hitter, and I want him getting on base at the bottom of the order during the middle of the game so that DJ and Judge and so on can have a chance to knock him in. If Sanchez makes an out to end an inning, you've essentially got back-to-back 300 hitters up the next inning and then Aaron Judge. That's pretty tough. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It helps other Yankees fans find the channel.